Oh, there's a Trump trial going on in California, and I'm here for it. I hope you are too. It's about the Posse Comitatus Act. Haven't you always wanted to know what the Posse Comitatus Act is? I did, but I didn't want to see it violated by the Trump administration. It could have been a criminal trial. It's an injunction declaratory judgment civil trial. And you're going to learn more about that, more about Charles Breyer, the senior judge who's handling the case, the 3 days of trial, when we can expect a ruling, and what is the impact of it? What is the injunction that the state of California is seeking against the Trump administration? It's Gavin Newsom versus Donald Trump, literally in the trial, and we cover it all the only way we know how, without blowing smoke or sunshine, on the midweek edition of Legal AF, the podcast. And here's a clip. So let's dive in. There's no segue off of a happy birthday. Congratulations to you. Certainly not the Posse Comitatus Act.
I will say it's not a big birthday yet. That's all I'll say.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something like, well, the Posse Comitatus Act is older than me.
That's true.
That's also true. It's also from the 1800s.
But thanks to OneSkin and all their amazing products, I look much better and younger.
I wonder if they're a sponsor today. Well, they are now. We're gonna tell Jordy.
It's true, though. It's true.
Jordy's gonna go collect. So I've been doing a lot of reporting on it, and so let me just see if I can do the shorthand, then turn it over to you for the color commentary. Judge Breyer, brother of retired Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, he's senior status himself, and he issued a preliminary injunction against Trump administration after the takeover of California and its National Guard by Trump. And he ruled that it was unconstitutional, that it violated the 10th Amendment, which reserves to the states powers that's not given to the federal government, and that his attempt under a unique statute to federalize and commandeer the National Guard of California was an abuse of power. Goes up on it, but he doesn't touch the Posse Comitatus argument, which was another secondary argument or another argument of the state of California. I just had, by the way, Rob Bonta, the Attorney General for California, on. He's up right now on Legal AF YouTube channel with an amazing interview, not to be missed. In fact, it was so amazing, I led the video with a talking point or a sound bite from General Bonta. I think you'll like it a lot about this case. So they bring Posse Comitatus, arguing that ever since our Reconstruction period, Civil War, post-Civil War, in order to get the Confederacy to feel comfortable and to cut a deal about a presidential election, boy, that sounds familiar, they passed this act, which basically assured the South that Union soldiers or the federal troops would not be in their states enforcing local law or take over domestic disturbances. And that's the law. That's what we've been doing. Now, it does say that a violation of it is a crime, although this is not a criminal case in San Francisco, and subject to fines. Doesn't really talk about injunctions. We'll touch on that in a minute. Judge doesn't rule on that. That's not what goes to the appellate court, because the appellate court in a 3-judge panel, one Trumper, one Bush, one Biden, rule against the judge on the injunction about the takeover of the National Guard. But they don't address, because it wasn't addressed by the trial court below, the Posse Comitatus issue. And way back when, we put a placeholder, we said, and the judge is going to hold a trial in August about the Posse Comitatus. And we're here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He's held a trial. So let me turn it over to you, Karen, about what you picked up and learned about the trial, and how do you think this is going to turn out for the Trump side?
I don't think the Trump administration is going to be able to show that it was necessary under the Posse Comitatus Act to be able to invoke the military and use the military for local domestic law enforcement. You have to show an insurrection. You have to show all sorts of things that absolutely did not exist in California when this was done. And it was sort of this manufactured situation that Trump said required this, but I don't think he's going to meet his burden, and I think he's going to lose bigly, as he says, in California. That's what I think. And it's just we're talking generally about military being used and National Guard being used in local law enforcement for local law enforcement purposes. And DC is in it, which we're going to talk about next, is in a very different position than California, because DC is not a state. But I just want to make a general point, which is, other than the fact that people in the military and people in local law enforcement carry weapons and carry guns, there's almost no similarity between the two jobs. To become a local law enforcement officer, the amount of specialized training that goes into it, I have so much respect for both, actually, for the military and for local law enforcement beyond. I mean, my father was a police officer in Los Angeles and served in the military, and I've always just had the most tremendous respect for people who serve in both, but there's virtually no similarities between the two roles. And the training is so different. And to be a local law enforcement officer and to enforce the local laws, it's so dependent on being a part of the community, knowing the community, and being trained to do things like de-escalate. And local law enforcement, only a very small percentage of what they do is enforcing laws or making arrests, I should say. Local law enforcement, they do things like when you call 911, if somebody passed away of natural causes in New York, the police will sit with you until the coroner comes, so you don't have to be alone with the person, your loved one who just passed. Or crowd control, if you're having a parade, they will help control the crowds. Or if there's, a swarm of bees that have taken over a hydrant, the local police officers come, and there's a beekeeper that works for them, and they help move the bees. I mean, these are all like examples of they do help with search and rescue. They help, they help crowd control if there's a fire. They show up when there's an emergency, like EMT is called. I mean, there's so many things that they do, and making arrests is maybe 10% of what they do. And so, and the military is a completely other thing, right? What they're trained to do, it's totally different, right? They're trained to engage in war. And so just federalizing all these local places, it's such a different thing. And I worry a little bit about the military or federal law enforcement. Again, FBI, you're going to bring FBI in. They don't patrol. That's not what they do. They do long-term investigations that then sometimes end up in arrests, but they don't do that kind of uniform patrol on the street function, which again is just very, very different. So it's a big deal what Trump is trying to do. It reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale, where you can't even drive around without these military checkpoints, everybody in uniform with guns. We're not there yet, but let me tell you, it's a little scary what he's trying to do by bringing these federal forces into local law enforcement. So I think California is right to fight this, and I think they're going to win.
Yeah, and look what happened with Trump. He wants to distract from the fact that there is a trial going on against his administration for violations of the Posse Comitatus Act. So that's why that, and the fact that he's got a teacher's pet named Big Balls, that's why he tries to take over the DC National Guard or DC Police Department at the exact same time as day one of the trial with a group of people up there. It's just a distractor from Epstein and the Epstein scandal and his role in the cover up and the crimes related to it, and the bad press about Ghislaine Maxwell and JD Vance's failure to try to tamp down the Epstein story on the weekend on the Sunday morning news shows, making it worse. So he pulls together this phony press conference about strong man Trump. Every time I talk about Trump, it's devolved into caveman. Me, Trump. Me have big club. Me going to fix problem in DC, which has worse crime rate than Mexico City. Wrong.
I like your Russian Trump accent.
I don't know what it is. It's like caveman Russian. It's wrong. It's not worse. It's 30% down over the year. This is just a facade because your pet Big Balls that used to work for Elon Musk and is now rummaging around our Social Security records, got jumped by a bunch of 15-year-olds. Lord knows what he was doing. I'm not saying he invited the attack, but I mean, listen, I'll just leave it at that. So Big Balls gets jumped, And now we've got to federalize the DC police department. I mean, like, DC is already federal. It's a federal district. Yes, the president has the right to do a lot of things there, but he can't take it on the road and do it in New York. But he does it right at the moment of this trial. In fact, evidence, we had Adam Klasfeld just joined us on Legal AF to be a contributor, and he's in the courtroom watching this trial on Zoom. And he said, it came in, the evidence, like they said, well, you're seeking an injunction. That means, California, you need to show that there's a chance that this is going to happen again. And they said, look at DC. There's a press conference going on right now. So that kind of wafted its way right in real time, as it often does in Donald Trump cases, to become evidence against him. But that whole, I was reading a New York Magazine article today that came in, and it reminded me of, it was a whole section about Donald Trump from childhood, where he was a bully that used to, pull pigtails and attack little girls. His father had to send him off to military academy, where it got worse. Then he gets under the tutelage of Roy Cohn, the lawyer, the pugnacious lawyer. And Roy taught him, you never apologize, you never defend, you only attack. And that's always been Donald Trump, always attack. And then, of course, the interview with the reporter Bob Woodward, in which he said, power, this is Trump to Woodward, power is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's about fear. It's about creating fear. That's all we're watching with Donald Trump. And we can't allow him to make us fearful. That's why there's over 400 cases that have been filed in federal courts around this country. And by and large, 90% of them have been successful, including injunctions. That's why they matter. And we're also batting about 90% at appellate courts. Sure, there's a stray appellate court here and there that makes a ruling like today, oh, we can do this to the US aid or do that. But by and large, we are winning in the federal courts at the lower level. There's cases that then drift up to the United States Supreme Court, 8 or 10 or 12 of them, and they are important. But main justice in this country gets done at the trial court level and at the first level appeal court level. And there's plenty of examples of Trump, for instance, chickening out, folding, taco moments, walking away from cases, releasing funds. See, they don't get the press that these other ones do. But when you talk to the newsmakers who are in the courtroom, like we do on Legal AF, Democracy Forward has a playlist on Legal AF YouTube channel where Skye Perryman comes on with me once a week and talks about her 80 cases that they are now handling and all the success that they're having. There's even cases where Donald Trump hasn't even bothered appealing. So people were like, we always lose because it goes to the Supreme Court. Not so fast. And that's not what the attorneys general, the 23 Democratic attorneys general, will tell you about their success record so far this term. And not with the public interest groups like Democracy Forward and the ACLU. And I'll just leave it on this, Karen. Rob Bonta, the Attorney General for California. By the way, keep an eye on that person. I mean, this is not his last stop as Attorney General. I don't know if it's governor of the state of California. I don't know if it's running for president one day. Quite an impressive fellow. He was a vice mayor. He was a representative in California. He worked as a district attorney, then attorney general. I mean, watch this guy's career. Quite fascinating, quite amazing. And why did I bring up Rob Bonta? Oh, we talked about all the cases that they filed because Rob Bonta said Trump may have learned in his first term and while he had a shadow government waiting to get reelected or elected, he might have learned. But we learned also the lessons the first time around, and we are ready, all gas, no brake. And I love hearing that. And I think our audience will take quite a lot of comfort from hearing about the attorneys general, the Letitia Jameses and the Rob Bontas of the world, and the other 21 of them, along with the ACLUs and the Democracy Forwards, and what they're doing every day as the firewall between Donald Trump and the American people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also agree with you that the takeover of DC of the DC Police Department that he's doing is a little smoke and mirrors, because I think he sees the writing on the wall that he's going to lose in California. And DC is slightly different. As you said, it's already federal, and there's a statute that actually allows him to take over and federalize the metropolitan police, the police force in DC, if there's an emergency. Now, he's manufactured this emergency, and frankly, I think is way overstating and lying about what the actual crime numbers are in DC. And of course, there is some violent crime and there are some problematic areas, but there's no reason to think that local law enforcement there can't handle it on their own. In fact, they've been handling it, and crime has continued to go down, violent crime, year after year, the last 2 years in particular. And this is from these are Department of Justice statistics. This is Trump administration's own statistics show that crime is down. But he manufactures this emergency, which then triggers the statute that allows him to place the DC Police Department under his control and deploy the National Guard in the city. So, declaring this emergency in the District of Columbia, because, as you said, big balls got jumped, I think it wouldn't pass muster. But I do think it's a loser in court, unlike the California case, because of this DC code. I think it's 1-207-40, which basically says emergency control of the police by the president when special conditions of an emergency nature exists. They can direct the mayor to turn over control for 48 hours and then again for 30 days. After 30 days, they need congressional permission. That's a lower bar or lower standard than the Posse Comitatus Act that is required in every other state for this to happen. So I think that's one of the reasons he did it timing wise, was so that he can get a win or have this happen and not be, because I think he knows he's going to lose in California. So that's what I think. Welcome
back. Karen Freeman Agnifilo and me on Wednesdays, Ben Meiselas and me on Saturdays. I co-founded that podcast 5 years ago. If you didn't know why we called it Legal AF, well, now you do. You're on Midas Touch Network. You're on Legal AF. Subscribe to both. We need the help to continue to grow our democracy and our pro-democracy channel. Full-length podcast Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Great news. We just got ranked in the top 15, actually I think 16th of all podcasts on YouTube for the last week. And that's all a testament to what you're doing to enjoy our work and to be part of our audience. So until my next report, this is Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.